Auzubillahi Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh and a very good evening. You're with me, Dr. Muhammad Husni Mohd Amin, Fellow at IKIM Center for Science and Environment Studies, or short as KIAS, listening to our program, Great Works of the Muslim World. Alhamdulillah, for our new episode, we will be deliberating on this topic, Masalih al-Abdan wal-Anfus, Abu Zayd al-Balkhi, treatise on human psychology. And today we are joined by Dr. Ahmad Nabil Md, Rosli, Assistant Professor at Kuliah of Medicine, International Islamic University, Malaysia, IIUM. Welcome, very happy to have you today, Dr. Nabil.
Thank you, Dr. Husni, for inviting. How are you?
Alhamdulillah. Good, Alhamdulillah. So, to begin, maybe you want to say what make you fascinated to talk about, to deliberate on our topic today and about our figure today, Dr. Nabil.
Right. Okay. Thank you so much, Dr. Husni. So to begin with, me myself, I'm practicing as a psychiatrist at
Yes.
International Islamic University. So meaning I earn a living by listening to other people and treat them if they have some psychological problems.
Yeah.
So why I like Abu Zayd al-Balkhi so much is because at any rate, if you give this book to any psychiatrist, whether
Mhm.
Muslim or non-Muslim, if they were to read this book, they would
Yeah.
easily, can relate to the topics and the substance that is written in the book. So
Mhm.
in a way, I can say that it helped me to um, reclaim the rich Islamic tradition that we have in relation to psychiatry and psychological health. So that's the reason why I think this book is personally important to me myself. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Right. Good to hear. So, in a way, it helps you to better your trade, I suppose.
Yeah, yeah. It helped me to understand that basically our scholars in the past
Yeah.
did talk about this important stuff. It is not as portrayed by the West that
Mhm.
for instance, we have psychotherapy
Yeah.
that we do with our patients, and sometimes they claim that this came from their own tradition. So it
Yeah.
is yeah, I'm happy and glad to know that we have our own traditions, our own say or opinion about the same issues. And I think it is also useful for patients, any patients, when they read the book, it is like a self-help to them. So not only for a physician like me, but also to the
Yeah.
patient or everybody who experience depression or anxiety. Yeah.
Right. So we want to go into the book, but before that, when you say that it comes from our own Islamic intellectual tradition, maybe by now our viewers, our listeners would like to know when or who is the author Abu Zayd al-Balkhi, and where he lived, and how did that come, how did it come about the idea to write on this book, and maybe why we say that he's among the earliest to come up with the science of systemizing the science of psychology in Islam.
Okay, thank you so much, Husni. It's an important
Yeah.
question. So
Yeah.
I'll be sharing some informations about who he was and why he
Yeah.
wrote the book, and a little bit about the manuscript of the book that we have.
Yeah.
So his name is Abu Zayd ibn Sahal al-Balkhi. So he
Yes.
was born in Shamsitiya, a Persian
Hmm.
province of Balkh. So
Yes.
we know that the nisbah that he has with his name al-Balkh to signify
Yeah.
the area where he originated.
Hmm.
And if we were to recall other Islamic scholars who have the same nisbah, it would be
Yeah.
later on would be Jalaluddin al-Rumi also known as
Ah, I see.
Jalaluddin al-Balkhi. Yeah, Jalaluddin al-Balkhi,
Mm-hmm.
as well as the father of Ibn Sina, who was also the native of Balkh.
Ah,
So this is just to share with the listener that al-Balkhi share the same um, the same culture, the intellectual
yeah,
culture, basically the apa, the golden era of Islamic civilization has produced these
yeah.
intellectual giants of Islamic world.
Now it's
Um,
maybe if I'm not mistaken, he's somewhere around the 9th century, 800 something.
yes, yes, yes. So he was born in
Yeah,
850 AD, and if
yeah.
we were to put him on a timeline with other giants, so we have
Mm-hmm.
like Al-Kindi was born around 800 ED,
Yeah,
and then we have Abu Zakaria al-Razi as his
yeah.
contemporary, born
Mm-hmm.
around the same time.
Mm-hmm.
However, al-Razi was born in Iran I can't remember Riz, I think, and
This is
Abu Zayd in Bal,
the physician, I suppose, the Muhammad ibn
physician, yes,
Zakaria.
physician.
Yes, all right. Mm-hmm.
Yep, yep. And then we have after Abu Bakr al-Razi, we have Ibn Sina in 10th century and 11th
Yeah.
century Ibn Hind and al-Ghazali. So this is if you were to put al-Balkhi on the same on the timeline, just to situate where he was born and the people around him at that time. So Al-Kindi was actually one of his teacher,
Yeah.
and
Oh.
yeah. So al-Balkhi has composed around 60 works. However, unfortunately, many of them do not survive. And
Mm-hmm.
among the works that he has written that we know was around related to philosophy,
Mm-hmm.
mathematics, history, geography, literature, including
Mm-hmm.
medicine. So the work that we have here, the Masalih al-Abdan wal-Anfus, or the sustenance
Yep.
of body and soul, is the only surviving manuscript of al-Balkhi related to medicine ataupun psychology, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So, but he is particularly well known for in geography as well as literature. And
Mm-hmm.
one thing which is peculiar about Abu Zayd al-Balkhi
Yeah.
is that there are only few biographers ataupun historian who write down about the history of Abu Zayd al-Balkhi,
Yeah.
and as written in the book, um, um, one of the biographer, which is Abu Yaqut al-Hamawi in
Yeah.
Mu'jam al-Udaba. So he's the sole biographer who write down about the history of Abu Zayd al-Balkhi.
Ah, I see.
Yeah, and I think last time you had a session on Ibn Abi Usaybah, isn't it? The
Yeah, the
the
he wrote on the lives of physicians. I think what was it? Tabaqat Atiba, I think,
yes, yes,
on
that
the
book.
lives of
So
physician.
yeah, so Ibn Abi Usaybah had Al-Kindi and Al-Razi in his book, but you
Yeah.
cannot find the name Al-Balkhi, Abu Zayd Al-Balkhi in
Uh-huh.
his book. So that is just to show something about Al-Balkhi's personality, perhaps, that make
Mhm.
he was relatively not well known as compared to his contemporary Al-Razi, for instance.
Mhm.
And in
But
the book,
I think there's a reason for that. I think because there's so few outstanding. I mean, in a field there could be few people who are outstanding. So maybe they were overshadowed. For example, Al-Kindi, I knew that among his works there were also some more mechanical contrivances. So, but he was not known as a mechanical engineer because he was apparently overshadowed by his rival, the Banu Musa brothers, his contemporaries, and there's a political intrigue going on in the palace with between Al Kindi and Banu Musa. So we do not know Al-Kindi as the mechanical or the mechanical expert. That belongs, the honor and the prestige belonged to Banu Musa. So I think in this regard, al-Balkhi, because he was overshadowed by his own master, al-Kindi, I suppose.
Yeah, yeah, probably. So probably that
Yeah.
is could be one of the important factor that make
Hmm.
him was relatively not known as compared to other people.
Yeah.
But in the translation, this is book by translated by the
Ah,
late
that's
uh,
interesting.
yeah, Professor Malik Badri, who used to
Mm-hmm.
teach at ISPAC in the 1990s under the leadership of Professor Said Nakib al-Attas.
Mm-hmm.
So in his introduction, he mentioned um, the description of Yaqut al-Hamawi regarding Abu Zayd al-Balkhi, in which he
Yeah.
was described as someone introverted and uh, very contemplative,
Mm-hmm.
however meticulous. Okay, uh,
Mm-hmm.
so so he compared with Professor Malik Badri compared with Al-Razi and also Ibn Hindi, for instance, where Ibn Hindi, one of his motivation perhaps to write the keys to medicine and guide for students,
Yeah.
Miftah Tib. One of his motivation is because his friends requested from him to write a treatise on this.
Yeah.
Al-Razi, for instance, has his own circle of friends and social, people to socialize, and
Yeah.
perhaps his idea and works are, familiar to these people and spread around. However,
Mm-hmm.
Al-Balkhi, uh, being someone who is more private, so lack of that social networking. However, that
Ah.
doesn't mean that his work is not important because,
Mm-hmm.
as I said, this book is really advanced um, uh, from the time it was written. It is still relatable until now.
But would you say
So yeah,
that it is also foundational when you say advanced?
yeah, I would say it's foundational in the sense that uh, the categorization of mental illness, for instance, tally with what
Mm-hmm.
we understand now. The
Mm-hmm.
book, however, does not talk about the basic things of, let's say, psychology of the soul. For
All right.
instance, if you were to compare this work with the work of Al-Ghazali, for
Yeah.
instance, Ma'arij al-Quds ataupun
Yeah.
Ajaibul Qalb, which talks about the faculties of the soul and etc.
Mm-hmm.
So you find
Mm-hmm.
it was described in details in those books. However, this
Mm-hmm.
book was meant to be written concise in a concise way so that it can benefit, I think, the patients,
Yeah.
so that it can be used as a macam um,
Like a
self-help.
self-help. Uh-huh, I see.
Yeah, self-help.
We have
So
an
you do not
early
want
self-help kind of book.
through. So you do
Yeah.
not want to overwhelm a person who is suffering from anxiety and depression with too much information. So I think
Yeah.
that's the reason why it
Mm-hmm.
is written in such a easy to read style.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yep. So that's about the book and the author. And I think the book, as compared to other works, is was relatively late to be translated into English. This one was
Mm-hmm.
translated in 2013 or 2014, if I recall correctly.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Even Professor Malik Badri was introduced to the work in the 1990s.
Uh-huh.
However, I think there was a German scholar who already worked on al-Balkhi's work before that in 1970s. I think, yeah. When they were discussing about music therapy,
Yeah.
there was a German scholar by the name of Virgil, I think Virgil. So he cited two scholars who describe about music therapy that can be used for patients. The first one is the 13th century scholar Ibn Qadi Ba'al-Bak,
Mm-hmm.
who wrote the Mufarrihun Nafs, or the Soul
Mm-hmm.
Shearer. and I was informed that a student is working to translate this work into English, and the other scholar, according to Virgil, is Abu Zayd al-Balkhi, and he did talk about music therapy in one of the chapters of the book. So that's about the author, and the book. Yeah.
Yeah. Before we go to the next question, I like when you say that some of these early psychologists also wrote books on how music can help with healing the soul. I mean, I've read also in, I think, in Francis Rental's um,
Hmm.
classical heritage in Islam. There's a,
Yeah.
he put some excerpts from Al-Kindi's Kitab al-Musiqa, talking about the effects of music upon the soul, and some of the things that he said. He led to believe that, what, even today we know that some music can have effects on the soul. In the past, well, my own research, I see that in battles, in before conducting warfare, music has been used to make soldiers braver. So music makes you braver. So yeah, I was wondering if al-Balkhi covered that as well. But maybe you want to talk about the general structure of the book before
Yeah.
we go
So
into the psychology of it. Yes.
yeah, sure. So we can
Hmm.
talk about the music therapy later on, but
Yeah.
let me brief you a little bit about the general structure of the book. So basically, the book is written in a concise manner, as I said, and it
Mm-hmm.
has 8 individual chapters. So the first chapter would be on exposing the needs to promote sustenance of the soul. So I
Mm-hmm.
think Al-Balkhi put this as the first chapter because during his time, he saw there is a lacking of inclination among physicians to take into account the importance of psychological health in treating their patients. So he says in his book, um, psychological health or sustenance of the soul is not generally mentioned by physician nor documented in their written books or on medicines. So I think he took that initiative to write down the book, which he claimed to be the first. He didn't know any work that have written in such manner before, and he make it a point in the first chapter that psychological pain, if it is not treated, may lead to bodily disorder. Okay,
Yeah.
and now we know that psychological health, if you don't control psychological health, you may end up with heart problem, diabetes,
Mm-hmm.
hypertension, and etc. And the reverse is also true. You have untreated medical problem, you may suffer depression, anxiety, and etc. So this is the first chapter that
Mm-hmm.
he write down.
Yeah.
And once the person is convinced that psychological health is important, the second chapter is on sustenance of psychological health, which is the prevention. You know,
Mm-hmm.
he talks about the importance of preventing um, you from going into depression, anxiety, and Al-Balkhi, just like other physicians during his time, subscribed to Galen's humoral theory.
The theory of
So
the four humors.
yeah, the few humors. So basically, it says that in order for you to have a good health, you have to maintain balance between these four humors, right?
Mm-hmm.
So that can be done. Kalau we talk about physical health, that can be done by internally and externally. So internally, by consuming certain minerals and food
Mm-hmm.
and etc. Externally, by preventing yourself from extreme weather, for instance, cold and etc. And that is about physical health. So in this chapter, he talks about the internal and external strategies to
Mm-hmm.
prevent you from going into depression, anxiety, anger, and other psychological illness. So that's for the second chapter. The
All right.
third chapter is about ways of regaining psychological health when one loses it. So basically,
Yeah.
tadi it's more of prevention. You do not have the illness. Now you already have the illness. So what to
Yeah.
do? So again, al-Balkhi talk about the internal and also the external strategies.
Yeah.
Um, and he add on that patient with depression, anxiety, they require um, external additional intervention, which is psychotherapy. Someone to listen to their thoughts and give
Mhm.
proper advice. So this is something new. So
Mhm.
he kind of introduced the concept of psychotherapy during that time already. Okay.
But is that
Uh,
the early idea of having a counselor, or does the Greek, or even before that, they have already this concept, like somebody having somebody listen to your troubles in order to soothe you, to help you
okay.
men psychologically.
Right. To be honest, I do not know. I do not know.
Hmm.
But
Yeah.
I think probably he's not the first one to talk about it, but he make it official and clear in his book. So
Mhm.
that's beautiful about his writing. So I'm sure
Yeah.
that there could be other people who talk about this. Even the kings in the past, even before al-Balkhi, had good advisor. So that can be
Yes.
seen as, someone who give counsel. So
Yeah.
the same thing you can reflect within yourself. Let's say Al-Ghazali talk that your akal is like the king. You have
Yeah.
also um, things to advise you to govern your bodies and other faculties. So yeah, that is just a bit of digression.
Yeah.
Um, but let's go on with other topics.
Yeah. Sure.
So so the fourth topic, he talked about enumerating the psychological symptoms and specifying their features, how to differentiate, say, depression, anxiety, anger, um, and waswas. Okay, wasawis. So it's kind of much introduction to these terminologies. What do they mean? He did not
Mm-hmm.
clearly define them, but just
Mm-hmm.
listing the essential features of these symptoms.
Mm-hmm.
And what is interesting in that topic, he stressed that the initial uh, or the core problem to depression, anxiety, and anger is untreated stress or apa ni um, distress. Okay,
Uh-huh.
so basically the Arabic word used in the book is al-gham, which was translated as distress in the book, though some people translate it as
Distress. Yes.
anxiety. Yeah.
Mhm.
So
All right.
untreated distress, the distress which is not being properly managed can go or develop into depression or anxiety, and anger, right?
Yeah.
So this is something which is currently it is widely accepted, and yeah. So that's the fourth one, and then he go on with other topics. He talks about how to counteract anger, ghadab, and then tranquilizing fear, taskin al-khawf wal-faza', and then methods with dealing with sadness, tadbir daf al-huzn wal-jaza', and finally mental maneuvers that fan off recurring whispers of the heart, which is the obsessive compulsive disorder that we know today. So that's
Mhm.
the general outline of the book that we're talking today.
So basically, what I'm getting from you, Dr. Nabil, that in the early parts of the book, the Masalih discuss the relation between the body and a spirit. Thus, it delves into psychological and physiological causes of mental illness, and what is what emerges as something we call psychosomatic. Would you agree to that? So he came up
Yep.
with that understanding, I suppose.
Yeah. And I forgot to mention. Thank you
Yeah.
for reminding me. So this book is, it has two parts. The first one is Masalih al-Abdan, Sustenance of the
Yeah.
Body, which is
Mhm.
not translated. And the copy that we have right here is the second treatise, which is Masalih al-Anfus, the sustenance of the
Uh-huh.
soul.
All right.
So yes, al-Balkhi is considered as the father of psychosomatic medicine. So
Mhm.
what it means basically, the effect of um, soul and body. If the soul
Mhm.
is not healthy, it affects the
Yeah.
body, and if the body is not healthy, then it affects the soul. So basically, in a few statements, some it's a recurrent themes in the book where Al-Balkhi mentions about these two relationships, that if you don't treat psychological illness, it's go into um, physical illness, and it become more difficult to treat. So yeah.
Yeah. I think, yeah, I think that is a lot to take in. I mean, in the sense that is whatever the content covers, uh, it will be useful for modern psychologists to look into psychological problems, especially. Uh, I mean, I've been reading that it's on the rise, especially post COVID
Hmm.
time, where people are more prone to disorders and illnesses of the mind, and then the stresses of modern living. And
Hmm.
I suppose these things, well, we are not denying that some medicines help with uh, the imbalances, neurochemical imbalances uh, in the brain. I mean, that is on the body side of it. But uh, what you've mentioned, Professor Said Muhammad Naqib Al-Attas, well, he wrote about human nature and the psychology of the human soul, talking about, well, he's more, because he's in the line of Imam Ghazali, the Ghazalian thought, where he explains, restate again the nature of the human soul and all the faculties there. But like what you said earlier, and which I liked, that this kind of book written by al-Balkhi, it's meant to help the common readers, people who, I don't know. Yeah, we are not saying that it's a self-diagnosis, but it's more of a self-help, and it helps also to help us recognize our dual nature, the spiritual side of us, and to maybe help with whispering, which not not exclusive to people who might be suffering from form of psychosis or schizophrenia, but also people who experiences self-doubt. uh, a lot of us, maybe even among academicians, where they say it's the imposter syndrome, for example. So I think we are reaching the end of our session today. But I understand that there'll be part two, where maybe you want to give us some teaser for our viewers on what you're going to deliberate from this book.
Right. So just now I talked about the structure of the book.
Yeah,
So probably in the second session that we're gonna have later, we can talk in details about the strategies that Al-Balkhi have listed
yeah,
on how to say counter anger, or how to deal with depression,
yeah.
anxiety, as well as the obsessional thoughts
Mm-hmm,
from his point of view. So
mm-hmm,
I can't wait to share more.
mm-hmm.
Yep.
All right. Okay. Thank you very much. So, viewers, that was Dr. Ahmad Nabil Md Rosli, Assistant Professor at the Kuliah of Medicine, International Islamic University, Malaysia, IKIUM, talking about Masalih al-Abdan wal-Anfus, the book by Abu Zayd al-Balkhi, focusing on human psychology. Thanks for listening to us. until next time, wabillahi taufiq wal hidayah. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.